yeah, that's a vibe. It's a vibe, it's a vibe, that's a vibe, yeah.
Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga back up, bitch? Why you always trying to press a nigga? If it ain't one thing, it's the next, it starts to stress a nigga. This overthinking that you doing, it affects a nigga. Patience running thin with you for real, bitch, don't you test a nigga. Ain't never been the type to show no one affection, nigga. She don't trust me, say I'm the reason she don't mess with niggas. Calls me toxic cause I ain't with none of the extras, niggas. Pushing me away, girl, once I'm gone, you ain't gon' catch a nigga. I'm feeling boxed in, I need me some space. There ain't no turning back like TK, I'm doing the race. Forget the bitch, a bag, the only thing I ever would chase. Thought you was coming with sight, your number getting erased. On to the next, you should've known how why the look on your face. Get the fuck from off my phone, it's best that you know your place. These years I'll never get them back, with you they go in the waste. Got what I want and now I'm skating and you getting replaced. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe?
That's a vibe, that's a vibe, that's a vibe, oh that's a vibe, yeah, that's a vibe. It's a vibe, it's a vibe, that's a vibe, yeah.
Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga back up, bitch? Why you always trying to press a nigga? If it ain't one thing, it's the next, it starts to stress a nigga. This overthinking that you doing, it affects a nigga. Patience running thin with you for real, bitch, don't you test a nigga. Ain't never been the type to show no one affection, nigga. She don't trust me, say I'm the reason she don't mess with niggas. Calls me toxic cause I ain't with none of the extras, niggas. Pushing me away, girl, once I'm gone, you ain't gon' catch a nigga. I'm feeling boxed in, I need me some space. There ain't no turning back like TK, I'm doing the race. Forget the bitch, a bag, the only thing I ever would chase. Thought you was coming with sight, your number getting erased. On to the next, you should've known how why the look on your face. Get the fuck from off my phone, it's best that you know your place. These years I'll never get them back, with you they go in the waste. Got what I want and now I'm skating and you getting replaced. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe?
That's a vibe, that's a vibe, oh that's a vibe, yeah,
Yeah, Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. This is the show that values time, so let's not waste any. So I've always had this fascination. Anyone that knows me, I've always considered myself, or I'll outright say it, I'm a little slow. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I don't pretend to be. Uh, I deal with what my reality is, which is I am not as smart, generally as smart as even the person sitting next to me. Now, and a lot of people, and especially like people that care about me and love me, is like, no, you're not. You're smart. You know what you're doing. And I think a lot of people have it misconstrued and messed up when I say that I'm a little slow. I genuinely mean slow. And when I view smart people, it's not that smart people are able to think in a way that none of us could comprehend. Yes, there's geniuses out there who have done stuff that's amazing, miracle work, borderline. Yeah, that's a genius. But just smart to me it's almost like a competitive sprinter. It's somebody who just gets there quicker than everybody else. Takes me a little bit more time. And I'm okay with that. And I've come to adjust to that, and I live my life accordingly. Something that might take somebody else 30 minutes, it might take me an hour. And that's fine. I don't mind. Genuinely do not mind. But smart people tend to figure out stuff quicker and faster than the rest of us. And sometimes it looks weird because the rest of us haven't really caught up to what they're thinking about. And so generally a lot of times when somebody comes out with something that is smart, creative, innovative, it looks weird. Okay? We're examining the NFC West today. There's a really good chance this is the smartest division in football. I talked about the AFC North, and I said it's the weirdest division in football to me in terms of those are all four extremely talented rosters, but there's these weird things about each of them where I think they could go 1 through 4, and the order could be totally flipped. Everyone has a chance to win that division. Everyone has a chance to lose that division. That's not applicable in the NFC West. The NFC West has 2 of the smartest teams there, and even if you think there's a gap between the 49ers and the Rams and how smart they are and how their organization is run versus the other 2 teams, the Seahawks and Cardinals, I'm going to show you today why this division, the rest of the NFL, and I generally mean this, has not truly caught up. There's other teams that are more talented. The Chiefs obviously have Patrick Mahomes, and that's kind of its own cheat code. There's other teams that have better quarterbacks, Allen, Lamar, we're talking about those guys. But this division, top to bottom, and those 2 teams especially, how their front offices ran, their coaching staff, this is the smartest division in football, right? So let's start with this. Brandon Ayuk is going to be traded. And right now it seems, I don't think it's been official as of this moment, but he is going to Pittsburgh. And there's 2 sides to every story. Generally, it's people that like you, people that don't, or it's haters and critics versus objective or fanboys. The critics immediately come out the gate and go, this is the end of Brock Purdy. He's not going to be the same guy because if you look at him statistically or if you eye test him, he's just not quite the same without all 4 of his all-pro level skill position receivers. If he doesn't have Ayuk, Kittle, Debo, and McCaffrey, he just goes from statistically a Pro Bowl, borderline all-pro quarterback to he's just awful. He's ass. He can't do anything. And then there's people that say, well, yeah, this is going to hurt them, but this, it's not, when you still have a Debo, you still have McCaffrey, you still have Trent Williams. I understand he's holding out at the moment, but I don't think that's going to go into camp. They're going to be just fine. And that's more of the, in my mind, objective, maybe more fanboy. But again, smarter people figure this stuff out quicker. What if, and no one's going to truly know because A, we all have eyes and we all believe what we think we're seeing. But sometimes you can't truly comprehend what you're seeing. What if in the 49ers' mind, and this team that has made great moves from the draft, free agency, the way they handled contract situations, because I understand Ayuk did get traded, but Debo wanted traded. They got him settled. McCaffrey, they got him traded for and signed to an extension, and I believe they will do the same with Trent Williams, and I think they will do the correct decision with the Brock Purdy contract, whatever that may end up being. But what if everybody views Brock Purdy as the guy who has to be uplifted, the guy who has to be supported by this incredibly talented roster? Well, what if Ayuk also has to be supported by this incredibly talented roster? And they're the only team that knows that. And that's why when he came out and he asked for $30, $35 million, whatever it is, top receiver market money, they said, sorry, you're not Tyreek Hill. Sorry, you're not Justin Jefferson. Sorry, you're not even Devontae Adams, who still put up a great season despite Oakland's quarterback, or Vegas quarterback situation. I still call him Oakland. What if they're the only team that actually knows that? And it's going to look weird to all of us because we haven't all seen it. We haven't all caught up to that point. But again, smart people finish faster. Yes, Brandon Ayuk, I believe to be a really, really good player. I believe he's one of the best receivers in the league. I'm not going to give you a list. You just look at him and you're like, okay, that's one of the guys. When you talk about the A.J. Browns of the world, like Justin Jefferson, I think, has separated himself. But when you go A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, these other elite receivers, I think Brandon Ayuk has put himself in that conversation. But is he also not benefited by having Brock Purdy, who has been accurate? I know we don't think he's spectacular, but he's been at least accurate. Is he not also benefited by Christian McCaffrey, was arguably the best non-quarterback in the league last year? Is he also not benefited by the fact of Trent Williams, that offensive line holds it down, so they're not taking as many sacks or negative plays? Is he also not benefited by Debo and Kittle, who also require attention and in some cases also require the double teams? Again, Ayuk, I think, is a great player. But the same criticisms you can have about Purdy and say, is he a system player? Is he a system quarterback? I refer to this Chris Carter quote a lot because I think it means Chris Carter is one of the greatest receivers to ever play the game. And he used to always say when he was on TV more, 99% of guys who play in the NFL are system players. And when I first heard this, I thought it was ludicrous. I was just like, you can't tell me 99% of these guys are system players. Like, yeah, you have the obvious ones. You've seen the young quarterbacks who are just trying to fit in, not make mistakes. I used to always based off aggression. Guys that were really aggressive could almost ad-lib out there. Well, they're not a system player. But remember, this is one of the greatest receivers to ever play the game. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, maybe they are a system, because the system's not just schematically what you can scheme up. Your system also has to do with where are you at? What does the rest of your roster look like? And are the guys in place, not just you, because you can't control everything, because you don't have the ball at every point in time. Are the other guys in place? And for Brandon Ayuk, who, again, if he's going to Pittsburgh and that's who he wants to go and Pittsburgh will pay him, go get paid, go get your money. I'm not here to tell him what to do or what not to do. But is he also not at risk of being one of the 99% of system players if he goes to Pittsburgh? And do any of us really have, I know, again, we don't think Purdy's elite, but I know we don't think Russell Wilson's still elite. I know I don't. I just watched him for the last 2 years. Painstakingly so. Justin Fields, we all love, and I'm a big Justin Fields fan, but Justin Fields hasn't proven he's elite. Justin Fields hasn't proven he is a legitimate start all 17 games starting quarterback. We know the athleticism, we know the highlight reels, but so neither Fields or Russ has proven that. Where else on Pittsburgh is he going to have a better situation than San Francisco? It's not going to be on the offensive line. It's not going to be his other receivers. He doesn't have another Debo out there. It's not going to be at tight end. And it's definitely not going to be with his play calling. Kyle Shanahan's arguably the best play caller in the sport. So, smart people figure this stuff out. And the 49ers, there's a reason why you don't just accidentally get their roster. And to put it really as if Ayuk wants to see like a real comparison, yes, Devontae Adams went to Vegas, still put up numbers. We all still acknowledge Devontae Adams is great, even though we've seen his quarterback play. He even frustratingly spoke about it when he was on receiver. But let's take a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who And Christian's been great. Statistically, Christian looks like he's just been great since day one. But the reality is, post that 2,000 plus yard season when he broke the NFL all-time scrimmage yards, most people would have told you Christian was just okay or still good, but no longer great. And the first thing that was coming out about him, and this was everybody talking about it, when the Carolina when they were totally tearing everything down, Cam was gone, trying to get rid of McCaffrey. Well, he's already got so many touches, and he's 26, 27 years old. He's got all these carries in college, and he's got all these touches in the NFL. Do you really want that guy? And Kyle Shanahan looked at everybody else and said, yeah, absolutely. He brought in, and McCaffrey has been, again, arguably the best non-quarterback in the NFL since he got to San Francisco. And this is no diss to Christian McCaffrey, but that also means he is a system player. He is best highlighted, best used in that system in San Francisco versus he was slowing down in Carolina. Again, some of that's with the talent around you. Like all these guys are extremely skilled. All these guys are extremely talented. But the ones that truly have all-time production without being in that 1% of guys who just aren't system players, and that's a short list when you're looking at receivers, which Ayuk is included in. OBJ early in his career, you could argue, not a system player. He was so much better than everybody else. He was arguably a top 5 guy by year 2 in the league. Just how great he was at receiver. Currently at receiver, I think there's an argument that that there's 3 specifically, and 1 is older. Like Devontae is clearly getting older, but he's proven that he could still be great with his quarterback situation not being great. Justin Jefferson has obviously proved it, the best receiver in the league. And Tyreek Hill, going from Mahomes to Tua, still putting up all these crazy numbers. That's it. Is Ayuk one of those 3 guys? I don't believe so. And I think the 49ers even telling you that we're not willing to pay you that is proof positive. Oh, well, they're just running out of space. They're not going to be able to pay everyone. That's bull. Because I think the 49ers are also going to be smart about the kind of contract they give Purdy. Trent Williams is 36 years old. They're going to take care of him. I guarantee. Debo, when he wanted out, they brought him back in. They took care of him. Christian got, again, a restructure, then an extension. Fred Warner's been taken care of. Like, John Lynch he's a Hall of Fame player, and as a GM, he's been fantastic. The Niners, for all the talent that they have collected, this is one of the smartest organizations in the sport. There's a reason why, besides Kansas City, who's obviously won 3 of the last 4, and been to 4 of the last 5, and you take out Brady, who's got a ring in there, they're the only team, they're even the most successful team over the last 5 years. They are constantly knocking at the Super Bowl door, and you could argue 2 years ago when the Eagles got in, the Niners felt like they were the better team, but Purdy got knocked out in that game, and when they played them this last season, they beat the brakes off them. So this is not just a talent situation. This is a well-run, smart organization. So Ayuk, you want to go to Pittsburgh? Cool, get paid. But understand, Chris Carter said, 99% of guys are system players. And while it sounds crazy initially, this is one of the greatest to ever say it, one of the greatest to ever do it, and he's saying this. And he included himself in that, despite his Hall of Fame career. So that's how high the bar is. Is Brandon Ayuk Chris Carter? Just saying. Now, there's a team, the second best team, in my opinion, without giving up rankings, is the Rams. And the Rams are smart. Obviously, we know Sean McVay was pretty much given the boy wonder title from day one. Some of the things he was doing, the motion, and the way he just entirely reinvented the Rams offense. Because if you are at least 10, 11 years old, and you are old enough to kind of remember Jeff Fisher when he was the Rams head coach with Jared Goff as a rookie, it wasn't pretty. Wasn't pretty. And McVay is another kind of smart, where it's not only am I smart at doing what I can do and doing what I do best, his ability to adapt is probably unmatched. When he first got Jared Goff, he said, hey, look, we are going to be, I believe in you. I trust in you. I think you can make all the throws. We're number 1 overall pick for a reason. But we are going to be a Todd Gurley, run-centric, high running back volume offense, similar to how the Niners currently are with McCaffrey, where Debo and Ayuk have been great and Kittle's been great, but McCaffrey's been the best player on that team. That first 2 years with Sean McVay, that was a Todd Gurley-led offense. Yes, Jared Goff was putting up numbers. We all remember the famous Monday night game against Kansas City, but that was a Todd Gurley offense. Todd Gurley, I think, is still in the top 10 of touchdowns since 2015, and he hasn't played in 3 years. Like, that's how productive Todd Gurley was with Sean McVay. But what McVay has, and maybe this is a pro to McVay just being smart but not necessarily a genius, is a lot of geniuses can get stubborn. They're so gifted at what they do, and they're so above the norm, and they're so above the curve that they almost feel like other ways to do it aren't feasible. I think Bill Belichick is a genius. What he did with defensive game plans throughout all of NFL history is second to none. Not just as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator. Go look at his sheet. The 6 rings speak for themselves, all the accomplishments. But Bill fell into this rut of, I'm going to do it my way. And I spoke about this a few weeks ago, where I don't blame him for that necessarily, because when you are that much smarter than the room, fine. You are going to go with your opinion, your gut, your head, because it's taken you this far to begin with. But McVay is probably just a tick under genius, so he's also smart enough to know, when do we need to pivot, when do we need to change. This was a Jared Goff, Todd Gurley team, get to the Super Bowl, we lose. He lost to the genius in Bill Belichick. Okay, let's switch this up. Okay, now we're going to be a Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp. We are an even more dynamic passing team. Let's figure this out. Boom. They get to another Super Bowl, win that. And then you were also, in that same time frame of winning that Super Bowl, there's also, go look at their drafts, and Sean McVay got this really, I don't know if it was a bad rap, but this rap of, hey, fuck them picks. We're trading away all these first-round picks, trading away all these second-round picks. We just don't need them. We want guys right now. And that worked, and they got them to the Super Bowl. But they did a lot of late-round drafting. Puka Nacua, maybe you've heard of them. And then the last few years, they've been drafting O-line and D-line because 2 of their most important players, Andrew Whitworth, who retired a few years ago after the Super Bowl, Aaron Donald, maybe one of the 3 or 4 greatest defensive players ever, just retired this year. While they were there, and towards the end of their career, they were smart enough to go, hey, we need to start reloading because AD's not playing forever. Whitworth isn't playing forever. So they were smart enough to say, we're going to push all in, get this certain team that we believe can win a title right now, and then we'll go start getting guys for the actual future, which is how the draft is. This is a little old school, but theoretically how it should work. We have a team that can compete now, and we are drafting their future replacements. We don't need these guys to come in as a rookie. Is it great when they do come in as a rookie and perform? Yes. And Puka Nacua obviously was a standout, but as they've drafted more offensive line, more defensive linemen, they're probably still going to need to do a little bit more. They haven't fully recovered, especially from the Whitworth retirement. But he has revamped this team multiple times in what is still not really a super long career there. Made 2 Super Bowls, won 1 of them. Like, his ability to adapt, adjust, because that's the thing we haven't seen, even Kyle Shanahan, because this is kind of Kyle's first great team, and we do have to see how does he fare in the post-cheap Purdy contract, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Debo, obviously Ayuk, we're going to see a little bit of that with him gone now, Kittle, McCaffrey, like when he's had this super team, see how does he adapt. McVay already had basically his super team and has now had to recreate it twice. So his ability to adjust, figure it out, and remember, people that are smarter, they get there first. Nobody would have said, and nobody would have come on TV or gone on YouTube or on a podcast and said, you know what the Rams really need to do? They need to look towards the future. McVay realized, despite what I had on the field, him and his general manager, Snead, they realized we've accomplished what we need to do on the field, but we also need to be looking forward. They're being progressive. They were looking into the future. They were not resting on their laurels of what they had done just right now. And what they had done just right now was win a Super Bowl. Did it take one bad year in the middle? Yeah, that happens. I talked about with the Eagles, Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman, about once, twice a decade, he just eats it on the salary cap. Carson Wentz, pay you this big contract. Sorry, we got to let you go. We're just going to eat it next year. But these guys that figure it out and know, take big swings, be aggressive, they're smart about it, and they're willing to admit they're wrong. Again, this is where Kyle Shanahan, I think the 49ers are the better roster, but my thing when I'm comparing coaches, Andy Reid has separated himself, obviously, and part of that is his accolades are just going to go unmatched because he's currently with Mahomes. But the next best head coach, I still give McVay a slight edge over Shanahan because I've seen this rebuild, this adjust, this ability to get on to the next step where and it's not Kyle's fault, we just hasn't been exposed to that yet. So I'm excited to see it. These are two really talented rosters. The Niners are arguably the most talented roster in the sport, especially from a high-end perspective. And these are incredibly well-run teams, incredibly smart. And man, do I wish I was smart, but I'm just not. And that's okay. It takes me a little bit longer. Again, some people, they can do stuff. It only takes them 30 minutes. Some people, like me, it takes me an hour to an hour and a half. And I'm okay with that. I deal with my own reality. I'm not upset about it. None of that. We got a lot to talk about today, guys. So there's a lot of expectations for Caleb Williams. And some of that's fair. He's first overall pick, touted as generational talent. And we knew the last 2 years he has been involved in this space. So I don't think he's going to necessarily suffer from it, or it's nothing new to him. But the Bears are just on Hard Knocks. So there's going to be even more cameras, lights, attention on him, even with all that other stuff being said. But I really do want to talk about what should be realistic and why everyone's realistic is a little bit different. And if you're a Bears fan, if you're going to be honest, your realistic and your bar of approval, it's a little bit lower than everybody else's. And by a little bit, I mean, it's a lot. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. This is HardFoul Radio.
Yeah. Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
Thank you, David Griffin. So the Pelicans acquired DeJounte Murray from the Hawks. While I am sad to see Larry Nance go, he was an emotional leader for the second unit. The reality is a potential starting lineup with Murray, Herb Jones, B.I., hopefully resigns, Zion, probably throw the rookie in there to start because you need a big, and it's another guy who's not going to demand a lot of shots, similar to Herb Jones. Then off the bench, potentially, if he's willing to accept it, C.J. McCollum, Trey Murphy, Jordan Hawkins, Jose Alvarado. Yeah, you're not going to necessarily be big, and so you're going to need one more, maybe just another 7-footer on the roster as far as some bulk and some size. Don't just get out rebounded every game. But length, skill, athleticism, shooting, Pelicans pull this off, and if Willie Green is really that guy as a head coach, that's a top 4 seed, potentially top 2 seed in the Western Conference. are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody as always. So, Caleb Williams, and I've tried to stay away from this topic for the most part because I've talked about the rookie quarterbacks, and as we doing all the breakdowns for each of the divisions, I did talk about them when I was discussing the NFC North, and I do think while the Bears have done a lot right, and the Bears are clearly in the direction of being one of the more stable, functional franchises, and I mean that wholeheartedly, I don't think that necessarily pays off all immediately. Like, I think they could have the right quarterback, they could have the right coach, I think they 1000% have the right GM, but that doesn't mean that's going to be an overnight switch. And they weren't bad last year. I know that's one of the talking points for them is that they were still a 7-win team, and that was with, Justin Fields, who played lesser quarterback than what you're expecting out of Caleb, and that's all good and well. But again, a lot of these even the franchises that totally changed their trajectory. We just talked about the Rams, and we're going to talk about them later. When the Rams got Snead, when they got McVay, when they got Goff and then into Stafford, it wasn't just this overnight thing. There is still time that it takes. When Kyle Shanahan, when he got to the 49ers, when John Lynch got there, they had the right coach, they had the right GM, but guess what? Kyle Shanahan had a losing record his first 2 seasons. Now look where they're at. So I believe in the Bears going forward, and I believe in the Bears' direction as a franchise. But I don't necessarily think, and I think they could make the playoffs, but I still think they're behind the Packers and Lions in their own division. Now, the other part of the Caleb Williams talk, Bears fans, this is a safe place. There's now, because of everything Chicago has done, they're getting more national attention. Part of that is obviously due to Caleb. He's whatever franchise he would have been drafted to, he would have immediately started. There have been more stories, more reporters, all that good stuff. But now you have expectations too. And you don't have just regular expectations because you've already basically been given the label greatest position ever or greatest scenario for a number 1 overall draft pick in NFL history. That is across the board being said about your team. So you're not going to get the year or 2 to figure it all out and let's see how he develops. You are already thought to be a playoff team, great situation, and Caleb's supposed to come in and already be great. What made CJ Stroud's situation in Houston last year so remarkable is it was unexpected. Now, I'm not going to say CJ couldn't have done that if he came in with the same kind of hype that Caleb did, but it was an unexpected season from a team that was, by all accounts, even though I did say, if you go listen to my show last year, I did with Tony, shout out to my guy, I said I really liked the Texans. This is before a game was played. I said I really liked the roster, really liked what they were doing, but I wasn't willing to, even to my own credit, or to my own discredit, I guess, I wasn't willing to say that's a playoff team, especially to have them winning a playoff game. But you don't get that with Caleb Williams. You don't get that with the situation you're in. But that should also only apply to the national media or other fan bases or people that aren't really locked in with the Bears. Expectations should come from within to start. If you're in a family and your family's all a bunch of, my wife works for a dental office, and this is actually one of her old ones that she's bounced around from a couple dental offices, but this one, the whole family was dentists. And it was like there was 6 or 7 dentists, and then there was 3 or 4 lawyers. So the expectation for that family was you're going to be a 6-figure earner, you're going to be a lawyer, a dentist, and I'm sure they got other people in the family who've done some great things, right? That came from within. That family had an expectation of what you should be able to do with your life. And they supported each other and they uplifted each other. And that's how one person became a dentist and he was able to pay for his son, his daughter, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how it all kind of comes together, right? So in-house for the Bears, what's your expectation? Well, let's look at your franchise history of quarterbacks. Who has the highest passer rating in Bears history for a starting quarterback? Oh, of course, it's Mitch Trubisky. We all know that. Mitch, he was great, right? Like, we all love Mitch Trubisky. Jay Cutler probably had the most phenomenal arm. Did that account to what? The best season ever you could argue, well, at least statistically argue, 29 touchdowns. Caleb will, and I think this is without a doubt, and this is my belief in him, unless something catastrophic happens, Caleb will break every single Bears record, and he will most likely do it, passing record, and most likely do it as a rookie. I think he could throw over 30 touchdowns as a rookie. I do. I think he could throw for over 3,600 yards as a rookie. I do. And I think he could have the first, the highest ever in the season is 92. I think he could have a 95-96 QB rating for the season. I think that's all. I think he absolutely does it, obviously, at some point of his career, and I'm very confident he could do it as a rookie. But Bears fans, that's where you're coming from. Your quarterback statistics are so outdated that you have guys, these stats aren't from guys playing in the 60s and 70s or when they had leather helmets. There's never been a great statistical quarterback in Chicago. And don't say it's not because they haven't tried or haven't had the weapons. Some teams are just, you can't really explain it, but like Pittsburgh and Baltimore just always have great defenses. Names have changed, players have changed, coordinators, coaches, all that stuff has changed. Those teams just find a way to have good defenses. The Steelers have a way, with all the names they've been through, they just always find a way to draft receivers. They just do it. Don't know how, they just do it. Green Bay's got that with offensive line and quarterback. We've all 30 plus years of quarterbacks for Green Bay, unmatched to anybody else in the league. Like, there's these teams that just figure out something. And then there's teams that just never figure it out. Up until this year, or these last 2 years, the Lions are one of those teams. Didn't matter who was the coach, who was the general manager, who was the owner, the Lions were just dysfunctional. There was no way to really explain it all the way through. How could you spend this amount of money, hire these many different guys, go through all of these different steps, and your franchise is just still dysfunctional, doesn't work? Like, there's just something there. And the Bears, who have historically always gotten defensive right? Like the 1985 Bears are an all-time defensive team. We still hear stories about them. You want to go down the list, Urlacher, Briggs, Charles Tillman, when I was growing up, like, and last year, they had the number one defense in the NFL week 10 on. Like, the Bears have just always figured out defense. It's a franchise thing. Again, different players, different coordinators, different ownership, whatever. Different general managers, not ownership. But they've always found a way to figure out defense. And they've always found a way to screw up quarterbacks. Jay Cutler, who was a extreme arm talent, had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey in the 2000s. And he couldn't get 30 touchdowns? Like, there's just something there. I don't have the explanation. I don't have some great thesis. Some franchises just figure out a way to do things. And some franchises just figure out a way to fuck things up. And the Bears historically have fucked up quarterbacks. So I say that to say, yes, there's expectations. Yes, there should be a standard and a new standard that Caleb Williams introduced, because he is better than most of the quarterbacks that you've had previously. But something about this something about it, it's just off. It's just off with quarterbacks. And with that in mind, the actual bar, like, if Caleb comes out and throws exactly 30 touchdowns, however many interceptions, and gets to 3,600 yards, but let's say they don't make the playoffs. Is that a bad season? Because that'll be statistically the greatest season ever by a quarterback in your franchise's history. It's 2024, and there's never been a QB to throw for 30 touchdowns? Dude, I just watched Russell Wilson, who was not good last year, and he got 26 touchdowns, and he got benched. No one's ever thrown for 30 touchdowns? Some franchises, it's weird. Some franchises just have it, on a good way or a bad way. this next one. I can't see my chat at the moment, but I hope he's in here. This is for him. So I used to do a thing where I used to have a segment called Shit Tony and Will Don't Want to Talk About. And that's because I get really into this sports nerdy part of my head, and I'll hit the group chat with certain questions. And sometimes you can tell, and I get it, these dudes got jobs, they have significant others, Will's got kids, and they just don't want to talk about everything that I want to talk about at that given time. And that's cool, I understand it. Love for them both, right? But I dropped the topic I dropped that segment after a while, just because I couldn't consistently do it. But I'll bring it back for this one time. Maybe one more time in the future. But I hit the chat and I was like, I haven't really talked about the Olympics, especially from the men's basketball side. I'm not the guy to give you the Olympics take, because I'm not that involved in swimming or pole vaulting or sprints. Like, I just not. And so I'm not going to come on here and try to talk about something that I have, I'm not paid to come on here and tell you about something that I just clearly don't understand. And I think I'd sound stupid doing it. So not going to do it. But I've been keeping up with men's basketball, but I haven't really talked about it either, because the U.S. team is just so much better than everybody else. It's like, okay, cool, they won by 30 again. They won by 40 again. And I don't buy any of the storylines about, oh, well, Jason Tatum didn't get minutes. What's that mean? Oh, Steph's struggling shooting. What's that? Let somebody try to tell you Steph struggling shooting in the Olympics means anything. Because the second the NBA season starts, guess who's the last person you want shooting the ball against your team? It's 30 in Golden State. And that has been the case for the last decade, and it's not changing anytime soon until he just decides to either change teams or retire. Like, I don't care if he's struggling in the Olympics. It doesn't matter. So I haven't been talking about him very much. But I did see the schedule, and U.S. is going to play Serbia. And now, again, I know there's exhibition games, and now we're in actual pool play. But Jokic, an exhibition, the stats, everyone saw the stats, was a ±0 against the U.S. Serbia lost by 29. Look, it won't matter. Most storylines don't matter from the Olympics. Like, they just don't. But there's a handful of notes that we remember throughout Olympic history. There's the obvious one, which is the 92 Dream Team, because of what happened. College players lost. Boom, we send in the pros, start kicking everybody's ass. Then you have the Redeem Team. Similar kind of story. And then the only other things that I think people really are on or aware of from the Olympics that people actual people talk about, not just sport shows have to fill in time, is Melo was the all-time leading scorer for U.S. up until KD just passed him. And I think even Melo having the most Olympic medals at one point. But it's not a whole lot we take from it. And it's hard for a U.S. guy because our team is so stacked year after year. Even if you take away this team or the Redeem Team or the Dream Team, like, our teams are just stacked year after year, right? But if you're Jokic and you're playing with, I think, one former NBA player, and then a bunch of guys who wouldn't be even on a bench on an NBA roster, you already played U.S. even. I'm not saying he will. In fact, I'd put all the money I have in bank account currently on the U.S. Obviously. But what if Jokic did win? Jokic already has, Embiid's been struggling, and again, I don't think it matters as far as when it comes time for the NBA. There's plenty of things to rip Embiid about. I don't think the Olympics is one of them. We already know he excels in that matchup. If you play, whenever you're clearly the underdog team, you're the less talented team, the best thing to do in the world in basketball is play slow. Because if you start giving 100, if you start letting both teams get up there in possessions, the better team, the more talented team, is just going to start showing through. So you got to play slower. They don't call as many fouls in FIBA. Again, I'm not predicting this. But what a story to add to Jokic's career if champion, potentially, when it's all said and done, potentially a 2 or 3-time champion. He's already a 3-time MVP. And what if that one time he fucks up Team USA? Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what a storyline. That would be, you have to then beating Team USA, which doesn't happen, especially from Serbia. Where does that rank in his all-time basketball achievements? It's below the title and an MVP? Does it then become his third most impressive accomplishment ever? Does it pass up an MVP if you feel like one of those seasons weren't, I think we all acknowledge the first one as he was going crazy and this last one as he was going crazy, but that second one has an asterisk next to it. Do we think that it's better than some of his MVPs but not others? Again, I'm not saying he's going to win. Put all the money on the U.S. But in the shit that Tony and Will don't want to talk about, and I just have sitting there going on in my mind because I got too much time to think about this shit. What if Jokic beat Team USA? Man, we got a division to rank. We're going to take a quick break here, then we're going to start talking about the NFC West. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily.
Yeah. Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
At number 9, Caleb Williams. Funny enough, he has one of Justin Herbert's old weapons in Keenan Allen. If you look at what the Bears did, and I don't like hyperbole statements, but this is one that works, which is Caleb Williams probably has the best situation for a number 1 overall pick in NFL history. At number 4, this is the one we're probably all a little too high on, but it's okay. I am drinking the Kool-Aid, and that is C.J. Stroud with the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans, C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, how we always say, or we've been saying since this era of rookie quarterbacks, when guys play right away, you pretty much know right off the bat. Which leaves us with number 1, and I know it's the best situation because most people don't even think the quarterback's all that good or And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody as always. So, I'm going to take a slightly different approach here. And this is, I don't want to diminish, demean, or look down on either of these two teams. I think this is just, unfortunately, who you're paired up with. I think this is what this is happening. So, there's a difference between superstars in stars, between legends and all-time greats or Hall of Famers. We all know, we've all heard stories. Michael Jordan walks in the room. Even at the Hall of Fame, when they had the top 75, everybody just kind of goes, ooh. Like, it's different. Even LeBron, as great as he is, even Magic Johnson, as great as he is, two of the best to ever play the game, certain guys walk in the room and they just take all the air out of it. They're just between personalities, who they are as people, between who they are as players. They just take over the room. I almost feel like, not even almost, I feel very confident about this. Is anyone covering the Seahawks or the Cardinals? It's funny. They're both in Vegas for over-under. They're both at 7.5 wins, which is not a playoff team. It's under 500, but they're not awful. New England is probably going to be awful this year. But because they have Drake May, there is people that are going to talk about him. There's a storyline there. It's the first post-Belichick. You've heard me say this a million times. You can be good. You can be good and boring. You could be bad, but don't be bad and boring. Don't be so uninteresting that no one wants to talk about you. No one wants to watch you as a professional sports team. No one even really wants to be considerate or think about you. That's what bad and boring creates. It's ironic because as bad as the Broncos have been in the last 7 years, they've never been as bad as the last 2.5 years when their offense was unwatchable. Unwatchable. It was horrible. Even when they had the win streak last year, it was an almost unwatchable, really unpleasant way to watch football. Now, there's a patch in there where they thought it was exciting. When the Rush trade was announced, I was excited. I was happy. I was like, oh my gosh, we got Russell Wilson. Obviously didn't work out. When I try to do my research for all these teams, my first thing I like to do is I try to go to inside reporters. Because inside reporters and local reporters. Again, I spend way too much time on this stuff, guys. When you're looking at the Cardinals and the Seahawks, it's really hard to get stories or information out of these because it feels like besides maybe aspiring reporters who just have to report on the team because that's just their job, not a lot of conversations, not a lot of people talking about them, not a lot of headlines, not a lot of buzz. And again, 7.5 wins means you're not a bad team. You're not a playoff team. But it doesn't mean you're horrible. I feel like I hear more about the Raiders, and a lot of people think the Raiders are going to be horrible. Like, what makes these teams? The first story for Seattle that got more than regular level news or local reporter news is a training camp fight. DK Metcalf took his helmet off and he swung his helmet at a teammate. That's like the first big story to come out of Seattle. When in reality, they should be in a similar situation to, or a similar storylines to what New England has. No, you don't have the top 5 pick at quarterback, but you just came off Pete Carroll, Hall of Fame head coach. There should be a transition. They got Mike McDonald. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be, I think for both of these teams, and why I felt to group them together is the more I was looking into it, these teams are both in pure transition years. And not just transition, but they need confirmation. The Seahawks need to figure out who are we really keeping into this next era. Geno's there, but he's not there long term, obviously. A lot of that is due to age. You still have DK Metcalf. You're going to have a revamped defense, in your opinion, bringing over Mike McDonald from the Ravens. If you're the Cardinals, Kyler Murray, who I think is still a good quarterback. He's obviously dealt with injuries, but there's obviously still a lot of talent there. Marvin Harrison Jr., you're also hoping to revamp your defense. Like, both of these teams are in transition, let's prove it years. Let's confirm who is going to be here long term. Because what both of them know from an ownership level and an executive level, there is a hill to climb in this division. There is clear separation. And this isn't the kind of separation that's, I keep picking on you Raider fans, but it's not the separation that is Kansas City to Las Vegas, where one team is Super Bowl favorites and the other team is potentially number one pick in the draft. The separation here is more one team is a contender and the other team is in the hunt graphic all season that they like to put on NBC. Like, that's where both of these teams should be and probably will be for a large part of the season. You will see NFC in the hunt, Seattle, Arizona, the entirety of the season. And they will have flash plays and flash moments because DK Metcalf is a great player. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm very high on. Kyler Murray, again, very talented. Still is going to be able to, Kyler Murray did get to the playoffs. I know we only remember what happened last year, but Kyler Murray did get to the playoffs. Kyler Murray had a Pro Bowl season, beat the Cowboys Monday Night Football. We're leading the Cardinals in the quote-unquote right direction. Him, DeAndre Hopkins, that obviously didn't work out. But, like, these aren't bad teams. So I kept trying to look. It's like, well, are they boring? They shouldn't be. Kyler Murray is an exciting football player. An extremely exciting football player. Marvin Harrison Jr. is an exciting prospect to receiver. They've been calling him the best receiver prospect since Calvin. So why isn't there more buzz? DK Metcalf is one of the most physically gifted players in the NFL history. And if all he does is eat Skittles. Or whatever candy he wants to eat. I think Marshawn's a Skittles guy. Like, explain to me. This is me asking you guys. Why are teams who are way less good, the Raiders, the Patriots, but people are still talking about them even outside of their local space? The Cardinals and Seahawks should just be regular bad. In the hunt team, has a couple, has a 2-3 game win streak, loses 3 or 4 in a row. Kyler Murray's, again, a really exciting quarterback. DK Metcalf, really exciting receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr., really exciting rookie. New head coach. I don't get it. To rank them, I do think Seattle finishes 4th. I think this is more of a transition year, and they're a little more unproven than Arizona. And a lot of that's just that quarterback. I think if both quarterbacks are healthy, I have Kyler Murray over Geno Smith in my quarterback hierarchy. So I don't think it's a crazy statement. But, again, Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, new coach, you're transitioning from a legend, and you're not horrible. Like, no one's looking at them. I don't even know who reports on Seattle. It's insane to me. Like, no one even, like, they're not on national talk shows. They're barely on, I don't even know if the local Seattle news talks about the Seahawks. People are more excited to get an NBA team back in Seattle than they are to just put out one thing about the Seattle Seahawks. I don't get it. Is it because, like, the Mariners have taken over? Like, tell me. Again, it's just it's weird to me. But I tried really hard, like, to put this together, and I wanted to sit there and I take pride in it of going team by team, really look into it, trying to be in depth, trying to give analysis, and I just don't know what to give with either of these two teams because nobody wants to talk about them. No one really wants to dissect it. And because, I don't know, maybe the Diamondbacks and the Mariners are doing well. Maybe this time we're really going to talk about baseball. Baseball's struggling in every city in America except Seattle and Arizona. I don't get it, man. So, Seattle is my 4th place team. Arizona is my 3rd place team. I don't think either make the playoffs, but I don't think either is going to be terrible either. I don't understand the lack of conversation around them. This is HardFoul Radio. We're going to take our last break, and then we're going to break down the top 2 teams in the NFC West.
I'm curious to see, and this isn't really the week to be talking about this kind of thing, but like I'm curious to see. I think Naruto ended a long time ago, right?
That's valid. Yeah. Almost 10 years now.
Yeah, Naruto ended a long time ago. The Boruto anime is stalled. I think there are a lot of people online that, and I think Dragon Ball follows this same thing. I think a lot of people online got a lot of clout from and made like careers off of
Those
Naruto
series,
predictions.
Mhm.
And I'm really intrigued to see what happens when
They
people
have
that have
the
been doing this
transition.
that have been doing this with One Piece for a long ass time, like Grand Line review.
Mhm.
What else are you going to review? The
Oh, don't
Grand
worry. He
Line.
does Hunter x Hunter. That can never fail him.
Yeah, I mean he'll get a chapter every year then. Huh? So he's guaranteed one video a year.
And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. So, the number 2 team we're going to talk about, we've already discussed them at the beginning of this, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams are one of those teams that, again, same way I kind of talk about the Cardinals and the Seahawks, that sometimes the air is just taken out of the room. The 49ers are such a giant, right? Multiple trips to the Super Bowl in the last 5 years. Acknowledged for the most part as, if not the best roster, second best roster in the sport. A lot there, okay? And so being number 2 to them isn't really the worst thing in the world if you're being honest about it and objective, but who really wants to take time to be honest and objective? It's much more fun to complain, be hyperbolic, scream, all that good stuff. The Rams have now, again, they're going to have to readjust because Stafford's probably only got a year or 2 left. Cooper Kupp, depending on how his injuries are going, he's injured again. He's probably going to have a year or 2 left. But they've been drafting better, bringing in certain guys. Like, I believe wholeheartedly in this operation going forward. But this is one of those, similar to when I talked about the Cowboys, when I say a Super Bowl or bust type of roster, is because if they don't get it done this year, it's going to look different again in 2 years. And not saying they can't do it. Again, no one wants to give the Broncos any credit, and that's fine. They've been bad for a long time. But Denver in 2013 was the greatest offense ever, statistically. In 2015, it was the no-fly zone. They won a Super Bowl. So teams can change quickly rapidly as long as smart people are in charge. So the Rams, but they with this particular iteration of them, and I think next year you're going to see them draft a quarterback. I think next year you're going to see them draft another O-lineman. And then they're going to try to do, Bill Belichick used to be great at this, where whether they hit or not, he was the king of moving back in the draft, and he never had top 10, top 20 picks, but he had a bunch of picks in the 30s to 40s. So he wasn't getting the A-level blue chip prospect, but he would get 2 or 3 of the really solid B guys who could fit in, perform the role, do their job, all that good stuff. And LA's got a lot of that. And this offense is potentially way more dynamic between both Kupp and Nacua if they're both healthy at the same time. Stafford, who is, despite his age, maybe still has the best arm talent in the NFC. It's like this, and you have, again, if between him and Kyle Shanahan is the best play caller. Like, that's how great Sean McVay is. And you could argue Sean McVay is more accomplished. He's won a Super Bowl. I know they both been to 2, but Sean actually pulled one off and got it. So this team, now, they are, the only real question I have with the Rams is, what is this defense going to look like? Again, sorry to keep reiterating the point, but some guys demand so much attention, you don't really understand everybody else that's around them. You know who demands a lot of attention, or who did demand a lot of attention? His name's Aaron Donald. One of the best defensive players to ever play the game of football. He's no longer there. And while they have made moves accordingly to replace him, get by without him, this, that, and the third, him not being there is still going to be felt. And it's the only part that I'm not quite sure if, and maybe I'm just not smart enough, which, again, I'm slow. I'm okay with that, to really see, can they withstand the Aaron Donald departure, retirement? Can they really do it? I can't see it at the moment. I think they're going to be good enough on offense. I think this team's going to be in some shootouts. I know Jalen, it's like, excuse me, like, I think they will be good enough offensively that they'll be able to deal with it, and that's why I do think they will still be a playoff team at 10, 11 wins. But it's what makes them different from the Eagles, who I think will be better defensively, who will make them better from the Lions, who I think are going to get another level up defensively as Hutchinson becomes, an even better player. Obviously, it's what I think the difference is between them and the Niners. The Niners have multiple stars, but their stars are both on offense and defense. Most of the Rams' current stars are all on offense. And because their play caller is so brilliant on offense, you can get away with that. So you just, if the Rams can figure out, I think with a just okay defense, they're a playoff team. If they figure out, though, and this will be one of the storylines to keep track of throughout the year, if they figure out how to go from okay to good, and let's say they have a stretch of really good to great, can revolutionize, they can change and mess up a lot of things this NFL season. The Rams could be really, really fucking good this season if they can figure out the departure of Aaron Donald. Because that defense, or that offense, legit. Stafford, the arm talent, how good he is, to put in context, and I don't think enough people understand this, Matthew Stafford, arm talent-wise, at 39, is still comparable with anybody in the league. And that's with Josh Allen, who could throw 60 yards sitting on his ass. That's with Mahomes. These guys are obviously better at this stage of the career. They're also in their athletic prime. But Stafford has a cannon. Stafford can make any throw at any time. He always has. He always can. Now, his thing is, again, he's older. The Rams have felt like this. They're ready to retire team. Donald obviously did retire. Whitworth retired after the Super Bowl. Sean McVay flirted with retirement. So I do believe this is going to transition. And as long as McVay's there and Snead's there, I think this team will be good again in 2 years. But this is their Super Bowl or bust year because this team will look drastically different. Stafford won't be there. There's a chance Kupp's not going to be there. I'm not going to try, Nacua theoretically should be there, but there's no guarantee. We're not, see what, You keep putting up record-breaking seasons. Is he going to want to stay there forever? Is he going to want to go somewhere else? Free agency, all that stuff. But this is an exceptional team. They're just really, really good. They're really, really good on offense. They have potential. They have high upside on defense. They're just not the 49ers. And the 49ers, obviously, have them coming in at number 1. Man, what do you say about this team? Even if Ayuk is gone. I'm just going to read, just go to, Warner, Funga, Kittle, Debo, McCaffrey, Williams. Tony and I were talking about the top 100 list, and there was an argument. Now, the position kind of invalidates him because no one's going to vote a left tackle the best player. But there's an argument. Trent Williams is the best player in football. He does his job better than anybody else who's currently playing the game. But he's left tackle, so no one's going to vote him that high. They just have, in my opinion, I don't think it's close. The most high-end talent in the league by a mile, and some of the most high-end talent we've ever seen in the history of the NFL. San Francisco is that stacked, that loaded. This is, again, now where I think they're not Super Bowl or bust, and I made this comparison yesterday with the Cowboys and Eagles, I think the 49ers and the Rams, some of this is just, it's harder because it's, I think as smart as I think that organization is, their contracts and because of where their players are at in their career, it's a slightly different space. But the Niners have done contracts right. They've done free agency right. They've drafted very well. Everybody's got mistakes. It's very easy to say Trey Lance was a mistake. Trade 3 first-round draft picks. But your first-round draft picks probably weren't playing on a stacked San Francisco roster anyway. So they made their mistake. They moved off it, which is what smart people do. They acknowledge, hey, I messed up. I'm going to fix this. Boom, get it out the way. This team has to implode for anybody to catch them. I think the Eagles roster is close, but we saw how they matched up face to face. I think the Cowboys they're close as far as their high-end talent. If you want to go CD, Micah is up there with Bosa, Williams. But this is the best roster, arguably the best play caller. Arguably now, John Lynch, you have to consider in the best GM conversations. Like, they check every single box. It's just, they have to implode for anyone to catch them. And that includes the Rams, who, as we've been saying, is a very, very good team. Like, the Rams are not a bad team. They are not a distant second team because of their own inadequacies. The Niners are just that good right now. The Niners are just that great. You can't even use good when you describe them. All pros in secondary, all pros at linebacker, all pro on the D-line, O-line, running back, receiver, tight. Like, there's just no other team built like them. They should be back in the Super Bowl. And I've said this is the biggest thing to see. Purdy is going to show one way or the other, and I think they'll be smart about this. A, he's going to get a new contract. Or B, he's going to get his new contract, but how the Niners do it is going to be huge. Because this team is not, besides Trent Williams, who's 36, but also potentially still could play a few more years because, not that it's not a demanding position, but left tackle, you athletically scale different than a lot of other positions in the NFL. This team could still be around for another 3 to 4 years. Bosa's under 30. I think Warner just hit 30. Debo is, I believe, 29 or about to be 30 during this season. Like, they're still young. Kittle, I think, is 31. So this team could still be around for 4 or 5 years in this same construct because that's how well they've been run. That's how well they've managed themselves from the executive level, GM level. Their contracts are really well done. And it's going to be up to Purdy. And I said this with Dak a few years ago. Just Dak, how important is it to get paid max money? I don't begrudge anyone for going for it. I understand it. Set your family up for life. All that stuff is wonderful. Not here to dog them. But imagine, again, someone will do it one day. And I think the 49ers, this is the most intriguing thing about them to come from this season. One day, somebody will follow the Tom Brady model. They will take way less money year after year to have a better team around them. The quarterback will actively make that decision, or you will get the other end of it, which is the team will actively decide, we could put anyone in here. We really do think you're a system player. And if we could make Mr. Irrelevant a potential Super Bowl winning quarterback, we feel like we could do that with any other player that comes in. And that's really the only thing. That and finally win the big game. Finally win the Super Bowl. I understand you're probably going up against Mahomes. That's no easy feat. But that's all they really got to look forward to. And as long as they're not overly complacent, this team should run away 12, 13, potentially 14 wins, win the NFC, and just team-wise, again, we talked about this. The NFC is a story of rosters. The high-end teams, them, the Lions, the Eagles, those are the best rosters in the NFL. They don't have the Lamar, Allen, Mahomes quarterback, top of the league. And this is the best roster by a mile, in my opinion. With that being said, we have some interesting coming up tomorrow. I'm sorry, NFC South and AFC South. We're pushing back the NFC South as well, but we're gonna explain that more tomorrow, as well as we are going to explain the 4 horsemen of media and this transition that we're in as a whole, as both fans and viewers of sports media. With that being said, I appreciate everybody as